Down one game, down at the bottom. Our red Terran player was once a ZenX, now is a StarTale. He is
Sparta.
And we're always seeing him in the next clan channel. Korean server, plays a lot of games, practices a ton. His opponent to the north for the team SKT1, very famous Brood War player he is.
SK Telecom T1 Fantasy.
A lot of fans for him today here in the studio, and he has a lot of pressure on his shoulders since this is his first televised GOMTV match, his first GSL performance. Got in here not off of a seed, but off of his qualification. Sparta famously knocked Nest out of the GSL. Speaking of which, if you hadn't heard the news, he did requalify. So big Nest fans, hope is not lost. Sparta with the 15 refinery. A bit later, these SVs are going to pass each other. This, of course, indicates cross positions. He's going to wall him out. Nicely done. No way for him to know if there's gas taken, the same has been done, of course, by Fantasy. So he's going again for a one-rack span. In this position that Fantasy is now in, he knows it's not gas first, but he doesn't know if gas has been taken. And I'm really curious to see how he's going to respond, because he responded so safely. You know when there's a deer in your backyard and you come out and yell at it? He doesn't waste any time running away as fast as possible. That's how Fantasy responded to that gas first. He took no chance. He wasn't curious about it. He wasn't sure, maybe if I put the command center on low ground and get the gas later, I could probably hold it. Most people do that. No, he got out of there. My analogies are a bit off today, but I have to say, how is Fantasy going to respond? He double gasses after the one racks span on the low ground, playing it basically the way that anyone would play this build. He's not going to play super safe this time. He's up a game, and he's not facing the super fast gas of his opponent this time. Sparta is going for a reactor on that barracks. It's going to give him a lot of extra marine production and a later factory. So he's going to be very heavy on the marines. Now, sometimes when you go for this build that Sparta is going for now, because you have that extra marine advantage, you go straight into medevacs as soon as possible and start to put pressure on with drops, and there's a big attack you can do at your opponent's natural with the big beefy marine count you get if he adds 2 barracks right now, goes up to the medevacs and goes with like 2 to 4 medevacs and a ton of marines. Another thing you can do is try to go for really fast eBay and do something similar to what we saw Fantasy do last game, where you attack, where you have that upgrade advantage in a more intentional fashion than we saw Fantasy last game, just having that upgrade advantage over his opponent since he got that eBay out faster. So far, though, still a mystery. And it is going to be medevacs coming out very quick. You can see the starport is being added now, and the second reactor for the factory. In fact, no, that's a tech lab. Wrong production tab. Sorry, guys, it's been a long few days for me. I will make some occasional mistakes. Tech lab down for Fantasy in his main base, grabbing on to that reactor for his barracks as well. So both players getting their starports around the same time. A little bit faster for Sparta here, who is probably actually going for Banshees. It's not quite certain what his plan is here. Making a Hellion off the tech lab. A scan goes down. He sees that Fantasy is getting a pretty quick stim, and the scan of Fantasy reveals everything here. He's probably wondering, is that going to be fast siege tanks? Is that going to be Banshees? And Sparta had a siege tank in production after the scan, swaps the add-ons, and will now probably produce Banshees. In fact, not only just Banshees, but Banshees with Cloak. And Fantasy's not going to be expecting this. In fact, he started his own siege tank because he's scared. He knows I better get siege mode out myself. I better get siege tanks out if I want to hold his push. And he does not start a Viking. He starts that medevac instead, and that's going to be very detrimental to holding the Cloak Banshees. It's a delayed Cloak. It's a very well hidden Cloak. It's a reactionary Cloak. Oh, you think I'm going tanks because that's what I was doing, but now I can cancel and switch my add-ons. Very mind-gamey. Very tasteless, actually. Cloak now 2/3 of the way done. First Banshee is already out. He's got a siege mode coming behind this. Sparta finds himself supply blocked, but with the way he's doing this, he only lost a few seconds of SCV production time. Nothing else lost by him. Banshee flies across, barely outside of the range of the watchtower, as highlighted here. Just barely. What is he doing? He turned it around. That was strange. A few seconds lost there. Fantasy seems to know he's got a lot of units in his main base, not actually holding at the ramp. Based on what he saw earlier, you would have expected him to be holding at the ramp. He expects a push with siege tanks. That's why he got his own siege tank out. That's why he's going for a drop to try to catch his opponent off guard while he's in the middle of the map. We'll see how well he's ready to defend this. Cloak goes off. There's no turret. And he doesn't have scans. The drop goes off in the main. I think there's enough here for Sparta, though. Definitely has enough. The medevac needs to get out of there. It gets out with the medevac but loses every single Marine. And the damage is being done here. Needs a scan, and he gets it. Nicely done. Snaps that Banshee out of the sky, but the second Banshee is about to arrive. A little bit tougher for me to actually try to keep track of everything here. He doesn't have another scan. He does not want to fight against those Marines while the medevac is there. Just wants to target down SCVs. The medevac actually not prioritizing healing the SCVs. Now it does. Wherever the medevac is not healing is what Fantasy is going to target. Or rather, what Sparta is going to target against Fantasy. Marine, see how many shots it took to take out that Marine? The turret finishes, and Fantasy does defend the Banshee. Now let me give you guys some unit numbers. Fantasy at 4 siege tanks to 3, a slightly less Marine count at 15 to 18, and the worker count very even. Sparta with a slight lead though at 46 to 42. One Viking out for Fantasy. It's going to help him defend against any concurrent Banshees that may come out. This is a pretty even game, but Fantasy's on the attack now. And overall army supply, he's got the extra tank, he had the extra Marines, he's got Siege Mode finishing up. His +1 again is very far ahead of his opponent. And he has Stim, something that Sparta could not afford with the Banshee play he decided to use in the end. There's that one siege tank, so critical here. Oh, great defense by Sparta. Those siege tanks up in the nick of time. Had they not been, so many things could have gone wrong. Fantasy's trying to find an angle here, and I think he's actually just going to have to give up on it. There's no way he can find an entrance here. With the turret, the siege tanks in the main base, all the Marines he's got in the bunker, and the siege tank at the natural, he doesn't have an overwhelming enough force to actually dart in and kill anything. There's no real weakness here. He can't get a turret and a depot. This was the only point where Sparta did not have siege tank coverage. He's actually going to be able to pick away at these buildings. This is really nice. Sparta not close enough to actually defend with his siege tanks. His production here is stopped. At least he saves the barracks, but he's got no choice but to move it. He's not actually making Vikings either, so he can't deny the medevac. I'm a little surprised Sparta doesn't start Vikings. He even starts more medevacs behind this. And Sparta thinks he's going to go for a counterattack, but Fantasy is ready. Will he siege up in time? He's got to be careful here. Is he going to react? He's not reacting. In fact, neither player reacts. I think this is a mistake by Fantasy. Trying to move like this, he's going to lose a siege tank. What weird control by both players. But Fantasy gets the better trade, in fact. Taking out these siege tanks, and he's taking out the barracks. He starts the elevator here. What happened, Sparta? He could have, both players actually had the ability to capitalize there. And Sparta definitely had the better opportunity, but he did not seize on it. Sparta just looks like he may die now. He's lost so much production. He can't even defend his own base because the siege tanks are encroaching on him. Tank gets targeted down. This is a big lesson on why not to build your buildings next to the edge where siege tanks can pick you off. You always want to build them towards the right side of the base. That's something Sparta did not do. Now he's 30 supply down. If he loses this factory, that's game ending. He cannot afford to lose siege tank production. He's spending money repairing his barracks right now. He's making another reactor that takes so long to build. Fantasy overextending himself, I feel, just a little bit here, though, with his Marines. He walks into the natural like he owns the place. He needs to get out, though. And the factory will fall. No more siege tanks for Sparta. Now Fantasy's going to keep moving in until he controls the ramp. If he controls Sparta's ramp, the game will end. You cannot actually walk down a ramp to defend your natural when your opponent's got siege tanks at that ramp. I think Fantasy actually just needs to back up here and start moving into the natural where he's got the better position and siege up that ramp. But remember, Fantasy has not had that much experience in StarCraft 2 just yet. He's been training a lot. Oh wow, this is a bit of an overextension. He wants to target down the siege tank though. He got away with it. Sparta's too scared to move in because there's a lot of siege tanks on the low ground, even though they have low hit points. The production loss of Sparta is really starting to show here in the supply. It's now 30 supply, and Sparta just gives up. GG. He has lost to Fantasy. Probably one of his idols that he watched in Brood War has taken him out 2-0 here, and a great start for the SKT1 player. Will advance at the very least the up and down matches, and Sparta actually is going to have to qualify another day. Really nice play by Fantasy here. Totally controlling Sparta, shutting down his production, and being very aggressive. Targeting down siege tanks in situations where I felt, you know, does he have enough if he runs in there? Is he going to lose too many Marines? But with all the production his opponent lost, he could afford to trade Marines for siege tanks, especially after he killed that factory. When there's no siege tank production for your opponent, you have siege tanks, he doesn't. It becomes a simple problem of math. He moved his production facilities over to the natural, and Fantasy just stuck with going into the main. He did not want to actually run around to the other side. So that was a pretty brutal series there for Sparta. He did what he could. In the end, it was not enough, though. Now, we are going to have another 5-minute break. And before that, you guys, well, before that or after that, either way, you guys can take this time to follow me on Twitter. Follow GOMTV on Twitter as well. Look up these two players. They probably have Twitter accounts as well. Make sure that you're doing that. Up next, we have MC up against Bravo. It's going to be another exciting ESF versus Kessa match. See you in 5.